Dad, don't hang up. Those 4 words cut through the noise of Mercer's garage sharper than any alarm Wade Mercer had ever heard. He was standing over a stripped-down Harley with a socket wrench in one hand and black motor oil across his knuckles when his phone buzzed against the metal workbench. The screen said Ava School Office, and for one impossible second, the whole garage seemed to hold its breath. Air tools stopped hissing. A radio crackled somewhere near the parts shelf. Wade wiped his hand on a red shop rag and answered before the second ring finished. "Ava," he said, keeping his voice low, steady, the way he had taught himself to sound whenever his little girl was scared. On the other end, his 8-year-old daughter did not cry. That was what chilled him most. Ava Mercer had a bright laugh, 100 questions before breakfast, and the kind of stubborn courage that made her climb trees even after scraping both knees. But now her voice was small and careful, tucked behind the sounds of a school office printer and distant children in the hallway. "Dad, don't hang up," she whispered. "The man with the blue cap is here again." Wade's fingers tightened around the phone, but his face did not change. Not in front of the mechanics. Not in front of the customer waiting by the open bay door. Not even for himself. "Where are you right now, sweetheart?" he asked. "In the office. Mrs. Lane let me use the phone." "Good. Stay there." He set the wrench down so gently it barely made a sound. "Tell me exactly what you see." Ava took a shaky breath. "He's outside by the playground fence. Same bench. Same gray jacket. Same blue cap. He has the newspaper again, but he isn't reading it." Wade looked toward the garage windows, where late morning sunlight flashed across chrome and glass. His reflection stared back at him from a motorcycle tank. Broad shoulders, gray in his beard, old scars on his hands. The kind of man some parents crossed parking lots to avoid. But under the leather and the rough edges, under all the years of learning how to look unbreakable, there was one truth Wade never joked about. Ava was his whole world. "How do you know he isn't reading it?" he asked. "Because panic was useless and details mattered." "Because he never turns the pages," Ava said. "Yesterday he held it upside down for a while. Today he keeps looking over the top of it." "And Dad," her voice dipped so low he had to press the phone tighter to his ear, "the gray van is back too. The one with the scratch on the passenger door." Wade closed his eyes for half a second. 3 details. Blue cap. Gray van. Same bench. This was not a child inventing shadows. This was a child paying attention. Across the garage, his friend Cal started to speak, but Wade raised one hand, and the man went silent. "Ava," Wade said, "listen to me carefully. You did the right thing by calling. I'm proud of you. Are the office doors closed?" "Yes." "Is Mrs. Lane near you?" "She's at her desk." "Put me on speaker and stay beside her." There was a soft rustle. Then the older office secretary's voice came through, polite but uncertain. "Mr. Mercer? Ava seems a little upset. We were just about to call her teacher." Wade kept every hard edge out of his voice. He had learned the expensive way that sounding dangerous made people stop listening. "Ma'am, my daughter has reported the same adult near the playground for 3 school days in a row. Please keep her inside, notify the principal, and have someone check the side gate without approaching him alone." A pause followed, long enough for Wade to hear his own heartbeat. Then Ava whispered, "Dad, today makes 3. Wade grabbed his keys from the bench. The Harley outside waited in the sun like a sleeping thundercloud. "I know, baby," he said, walking toward it without running, because running scared people, and this needed calm. "Stay where you are. I'm on my way." Wade Mercer did not remember crossing the garage floor. Only the feeling of the phone warm against his ear and the strange quiet that settled behind his ribs. He had spent most of his life being judged by first looks, by the leather vest hanging near his locker, by the thunder of his motorcycle, by the old stories people told before they ever shook his hand. But fatherhood had changed the rules. It had taught him that the loudest man in the room was not always the strongest, and the fastest reaction was not always the safest one. As he stepped into the sunlight, he heard Ava breathing through the speakerphone, trying to be brave in a school office that suddenly felt too big for an 8-year-old child. "Sweetheart," he said, swinging one leg over his Harley. "Keep telling Mrs. Lane what you remember. Not what you think, only what you saw." There was a small pause. Then Ava answered with the careful seriousness he knew so well. "He has brown shoes with white bottoms. His jacket has a zipper that shines. The van has no front license plate, but I saw letters on the back yesterday. I think it started with K." Wade looked across the street before pulling out, checking traffic the way he had taught her to check crosswalks. That is good remembering. Am I in trouble? She asked. The question struck him harder than fear. Children often blamed themselves for making adults uncomfortable. Wade hated that. No, baby. You are not in trouble for noticing something that did not feel right. You are doing exactly what I taught you. And he had taught her, not because he wanted her afraid of the world, but because he wanted her awake inside it. Every morning at Maple Ridge Elementary, before she climbed off the back of his bike, they played their little safety game. Find 3 safe adults. Name 2 exits. Tell me one thing that looks different today. Most mornings she rolled her eyes and laughed. Dad, you make everything a mission. And he would smile under his beard and say, a calm mind is better than scared feet. That morning had been no different at first. The air had smelled like cut grass and cafeteria pancakes. Yellow buses were lined along the curb, blinking red lights against a pale blue sky. Ava had worn her denim jacket with the embroidered stars on the sleeves, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders as she skipped beside him. She had pointed toward the playground and said the swings had new chains. She had noticed a substitute crossing guard. Then she had looked past the chain-link fence and gone quiet for just half a step. Wade had noticed, because fathers learned the language of small pauses. What is it he had asked? Ava had shrugged, trying to dismiss herself before anyone else could. That man was here yesterday, too. Wade had followed her eyes to a bench near the outer sidewalk, where a man in a blue cap sat with a folded newspaper across his lap. Nothing about him looked dramatic. He was not leaning over the fence. He was not speaking to children. He was simply there, still as a signpost, ordinary enough that most people would forget him before reaching the front door. Wade had crouched in front of Ava and kept his voice gentle. Seeing someone twice does not always mean danger. But if something keeps feeling wrong, you tell a grown-up. You do not have to prove fear before you ask for help. She had nodded, kissed his cheek, and run inside before the first bell. Now, less than 3 hours later, the same ordinary man had become a pattern. Wade guided the Harley through town without speeding, though every nerve in his body wanted to tear the road open. He passed the diner where retirees drank coffee, the hardware store with flags in the window, the church sign announcing a canned food drive. Everything looked normal, which somehow made the call feel worse. Real trouble did not always arrive with sirens. Sometimes it sat quietly beside a playground with a newspaper it never read. Back in the office, Mrs. Lane's voice returned, thinner now. Mr. Mercer, Principal Dawson is on his way. Ava's teacher is being called in. Wade heard Ava whisper something. Then Mrs. Lane added, she says the man only stands when the second graders come outside. Wade's hand eased off the throttle as he approached the school zone. The flashing sign read 20 miles per hour. He obeyed it exactly. Thank you for listening to her, he said. Ahead, the school roof appeared beyond a row of maple trees, bright and harmless under the noon sun. Wade took one slow breath, then another. He was not coming as the man people expected him to be. He was coming as the father Ava needed him to be. The front of Maple Ridge Elementary looked exactly the way Wade remembered from every morning drop-off, but now every detail seemed to carry weight. The flag moved gently above the entrance. Chalk drawings covered the sidewalk near the kindergarten doors. A line of small jackets hung inside the glass hallway, bright colors against beige brick, ordinary signs of childhood that made Wade's chest tighten. He parked his Harley in the visitor lot instead of pulling up to the curb, shut off the engine, and removed his sunglasses before he stepped onto school property. People looked anyway. A man like Wade Mercer did not enter a school unnoticed. His boots were heavy, his beard was streaked with gray, and the old leather jacket across his shoulders made 2 parents near the office window fall silent. Years ago, that would have made him angry. Now it only reminded him why he had to move carefully. Fear could spread faster than truth. Inside the office, Ava sat in a plastic chair beside Mrs. Lane's desk, both hands wrapped around the phone even though the call had ended. Her denim jacket looked too small against the large room, and her backpack rested at her feet like she had been told not to move an inch. The moment she saw him, her eyes filled, but she did not run. She waited, just like he had asked. Wade crossed the office slowly and lowered himself to one knee in front of her, making his big frame smaller. You did good, he said, and only then did Ava lean forward and press her forehead against his shoulder. He placed one hand lightly against her back, careful and steady. I was scared nobody would believe me, she whispered. Wade looked past her at Mrs. Lane, then toward Principal Dawson, who had just entered from the hallway with a walkie-talkie clipped to his belt and worry written across his face. That is why we are going to do this the right way, Wade told her. Not loud, not angry. Right. Principal Dawson adjusted his glasses and offered a hand. Mr. Mercer, I am Paul Dawson. We have campus security checking the playground side now. Wade stood and shook his hand, firm but not hard. Thank you. Has anyone called the school resource officer? Officer Wells is on her way from the middle school building. It is less than half a mile. Wade nodded. Good. Until she gets here, please keep the second graders inside. A flicker crossed the principal's face, the kind adults wore when they were deciding whether a parent was overreacting. Before he could answer, Ava spoke from behind Wade. He only stands up when Noah comes out. The room went still. Principal Dawson turned toward her. Noah Bennett. Ava nodded. He is in Mrs. Brooks's class. He has the red lunchbox with the fire truck. The man watches him more than the rest of us. Mrs. Lane's hand moved to her mouth. Wade felt the old heat rise in him, the instinct to stride outside and put himself between every child and the fence. But instinct was not a plan. He heard Ava's voice from months earlier, after he had snapped at a driver who cut them off near the grocery store. Dad, when you get angry, people stop listening. She had been right then. She was right now, even without saying it. Wade turned to Principal Dawson. Where can we look without being seen from the playground? The principal hesitated, then led them into the small conference room beside the office, where a bank of security monitors sat beneath a wall clock. The screens showed hallways, entrances, the cafeteria, and the playground under a clean American noon. At first, the man in the blue cap looked like nothing more than background. A passerby, a stranger on a public sidewalk. He sat on the bench beyond the fence, newspaper open, gray van parked 30 yards away near a row of hedges. Wade did not speak. He watched the way Ava had watched. The paper did not move. The man's head lifted every few seconds. When a classroom door opened and children began filing toward the playground, he folded the newspaper once, stood, and stepped closer to the fence. Ava's small voice trembled beside him. See, Mrs. Brooks arrived breathless, her face pale from the rush down the hallway. Ava told me yesterday, she said quietly. I thought maybe he was waiting for someone from the neighborhood. Wade looked at her, and for 1 second, everyone seemed to expect thunder from him. Instead, he said, then today we check. That is how grown-ups fix mistakes. Officer Karen Wells entered just as the second graders appeared on the monitor. She was calm, compact, and focused, with her radio in one hand and her eyes already on the screen. Nobody approaches him alone, she said. We keep the children inside, get the plate number if we can, and call local police for support. Wade exhaled slowly. For the first time since Ava's call, someone else in the room sounded as steady as he was trying to be. Then, on the monitor, a small boy with a red fire truck lunchbox stepped into view near the playground door. The man in the blue cap moved again. The monitor showed everything in the flat, silent way cameras did, without music, without warning, without mercy for people who had missed what was right in front of them. Noah Bennett walked near the end of the second grade line, small and distracted, one hand gripping the strap of his red fire truck lunchbox even though lunch had already passed. He was a thin boy with sandy hair and oversized sneakers, the kind of child who looked as if he was always trying not to take up too much space. Ava stood close to Wade, her fingers curled around the edge of his jacket. That is him, she whispered. That is Noah. On the screen, the man in the blue cap shifted his weight. It was not much. Just one step toward the fence, then another, the newspaper folding lower in his hands. But Wade saw the pattern now. The man had ignored the first children. He had ignored the teacher at the back of the line. His attention had sharpened only when Noah came into view. Officer Wells leaned toward the monitor. Keep that camera on him, she said to Principal Dawson. Do not zoom in so much that we lose the van. Mrs. Brooks stood behind them with one hand pressed against her collarbone. I should have listened yesterday, she said, barely above a whisper. Wade heard the guilt in her voice, but guilt could come later. Listen now, he said, not unkindly. That is what matters. The word surprised even him. 10 years earlier, he might have let anger fill the room because anger was easier than fear. It made a man feel powerful when he did not know what to do. But Ava was watching him, and every child in that hallway needed adults who could think clearly. Principal Dawson spoke into his walkie-talkie, his voice tight but controlled. All second-grade classes remain inside. Repeat, remain inside. Playground hold for safety check. On the screen, Mrs. Brooks's substitute at the playground door paused, then guided the line back toward the building. Children turned in confusion, some disappointed, some laughing because they thought it was a drill. Noah glanced toward the fence. The man in the blue cap noticed the movement and raised one hand. Not a wave exactly, more like a signal meant for one person. Wade felt Ava stiffen. "He knows him," she said. Officer Wells turned. "What did you say?" Ava swallowed. Noah looked like he knew him, but not Happy knew him. No one dismissed her this time. Officer Wells crouched to Ava's eye level. "That is an important observation. You are helping us." "Did Noah ever say anything about a man with a blue cap?" Ava shook her head. "No, but last week he cried after pickup. He said his mom was late, but she was not. She was in the car line. He just did not want to go outside yet." The room absorbed that quietly. Mrs. Brooks covered her mouth, eyes shining now with the weight of small signs seen too late. Wade placed a steady hand on Ava's shoulder. "You are not responsible for fixing grown-up problems," he said softly. "You understand me? You told the truth. That is your job. The rest is ours." Officer Wells moved with practiced calm. She called the local police department, gave the school address, described the gray van, the blue cap, the public sidewalk, and the concern involving a specific student. She did not exaggerate. She did not guess. She built the truth one fact at a time. That mattered to Wade. Facts could protect children better than fear when adults respected them. While they waited, Principal Dawson pulled up previous camera footage. Monday, 11:42 in the morning. The man appeared at the bench. Tuesday, 11:39. Same bench, same van, same folded newspaper. Wednesday, now, 11:41. Wade watched Mrs. Brooks's face change with each timestamp. Shame, then worry, then determination. "I need Noah's emergency contact file," Officer Wells said. Principal Dawson opened a locked cabinet and retrieved it. The first contact was his mother, Rachel Bennett. The second line had a name crossed out in red ink. Daniel Price, maternal grandfather, no pickup authorization. Officer Wells looked at the red line for one long second. "There it is," she said. Wade did not ask what Daniel had done. He did not need the full story to understand the present danger. A person without permission was watching a child from beyond the fence. That was enough. Then the office phone rang. Mrs. Lane answered, listened, and turned pale. "Rachel Bennett is on her way," she said. "She says Daniel Price is not supposed to be anywhere near Noah." On the monitor, the man in the blue cap folded the newspaper completely, tucked it under his arm, and started walking toward the side gate. For 1 second, nobody moved. The screen showed Daniel Price crossing the sidewalk with the careful patience of a man who did not believe anyone was watching. His gray jacket hung loose around his shoulders. The blue cap shaded most of his face. Under one arm, the folded newspaper looked harmless, almost old-fashioned, but Wade had learned a long time ago that harmless was sometimes the mask danger wore best. Officer Wells lifted her radio. "Lock the side gate now. Keep all students away from the west hallway." Principal Dawson repeated the order into his walkie-talkie, and somewhere beyond the conference room walls, doors clicked shut in a chain of quiet protection. Ava's hand found Wade's, and he folded his fingers around hers, warm and steady. "Is Noah safe?" she asked. "He is inside," Wade said. "And because you spoke up, everyone knows where to look." Mrs. Brooks stepped toward the door. "I need to get to my class." Officer Wells stopped her gently. "Take the interior hallway. Do not pass the playground windows if you can avoid it. Keep the children seated away from the door. Make it feel normal." Mrs. Brooks nodded, but before she left, she looked at Ava. Her voice trembled, not from fear alone, but from humility. "Ava, I am sorry I did not understand sooner." Ava looked up at her teacher with the uncertain kindness of a child who wanted adults to be good even after they made mistakes. "It is okay," she said. Wade leaned down slightly. "It is kind of you to say that, baby. But grown-ups still need to learn from it." Mrs. Brooks accepted the words without defending herself. "I will," she said, and hurried into the hallway. On the monitor, Daniel reached the side gate and paused. He looked through the bars toward the empty stretch of playground, then checked the building windows. Wade could feel old habits waking in his bones, the urge to go outside and become a wall no one would cross. It would have been easy, too easy. A man like Daniel might have taken one look at Wade and backed away. But fear did not create records. Fear did not explain patterns. Fear did not protect Noah tomorrow or the next child next week. Officer Wells seemed to read that struggle in Wade's face. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "I need you inside for now." Wade nodded once. "I know." Those two words cost him more than anyone in the room understood. Mrs. Lane turned from the front desk. "A woman just pulled into the visitor lot very fast. She is coming to the door." Principal Dawson looked at the monitor for the entrance camera. A white sedan stopped crookedly in a parking space, and Rachel Bennett stepped out before the engine fully settled. She was a small woman in navy scrubs, her hair pulled back, her face pale with the particular fear of a parent who had received the call every parent dreads. She ran to the front office, then forced herself to slow down at the door because it was a school and children were watching. That small act told Wade something about her immediately. She was terrified, but she was still trying to be safe. Mrs. Lane buzzed her in. Rachel entered breathless. "Where is Noah?" "In his classroom," Officer Wells said. "He is safe." Rachel pressed both hands over her mouth and closed her eyes. Relief hit her so hard, she nearly folded into the nearest chair. "Daniel is outside?" "At the west side gate," Officer Wells answered. "Local police are on the way. Can you confirm he has no authorization to pick up your son?" Rachel nodded quickly. "He has no authorization. There is a court order. He is not supposed to contact Noah at school, at home, anywhere without supervision." Ava stood half-hidden beside Wade, watching the woman's face. Rachel noticed her then. "Is this the little girl who saw him?" Wade felt Ava's fingers tighten, but she stepped forward on her own. "Yes, ma'am." Rachel lowered herself to Ava's height, tears bright in her eyes, but her voice careful, respectful. "Thank you for telling someone. You helped my son." Ava did not know what to do with praise that heavy. She looked back at Wade. He nodded. "You can just say you are welcome." "You are welcome," Ava whispered. At that moment, the office phone rang again, sharp in the silence. Mrs. Lane answered, listened, and looked toward the monitor with alarm. The side gate camera just picked up audio from the intercom. "He is calling Noah by name." Everyone turned back to the screen. Daniel stood outside the locked gate, one hand near the buzzer, his voice faint through the school system but clear enough to chill the room. "Noah, buddy, it is Grandpa Dan. I brought something for you." From inside the west hallway, far beyond the office, a child's uncertain voice echoed faintly. "Grandpa." Rachel's face went white. Wade released Ava's hand and stepped toward the door, not with rage, not with noise, but with the stillness of a man choosing exactly where his strength belonged. Wade reached the hallway before anyone could mistake his movement for anger. His boots struck the polished floor in slow, even steps, each one measured against the sound of children murmuring behind closed classroom doors. Officer Wells followed at his left shoulder, radio raised, while Principal Dawson moved ahead just far enough to direct staff away from the west side. Rachel Bennett came too, though her hands trembled against her scrubs, and Ava stayed behind with Mrs. Lane because Wade had pointed once to the office chair, and she had understood. Being brave did not mean following fear into every room. The west hallway was lined with construction paper suns, spelling lists, and crayon drawings of family pets. The sweetness of it made the moment feel even heavier. At the far end, Noah Bennett stood near his classroom door, half in the hallway, half protected by Mrs. Brooks's outstretched arm. His face was turned toward the side entrance where Daniel Price's voice carried through the intercom speaker, soft and familiar in the way only family voices could be. "Come on, buddy. Just for a minute. I have your old fire truck. The one with the ladder that still moves." Noah's eyes widened. For a child, memory could be a rope, a toy, a nickname, a voice from before things became complicated. All of it could pull harder than any warning. Rachel made a broken sound under her breath, but Wade lifted one hand without looking back, asking her to hold still for just a heartbeat longer. If she ran forward crying Daniel's name, Noah might panic. If Wade stormed the door, Daniel might turn the scene into exactly what he wanted, a frightening biker against a harmless grandfather. Wade had spent years being misunderstood. He would not let that misunderstanding become Daniel's shield. Officer Wells spoke quietly into her radio. Subject is at the west gate using the intercom to call the child. Officers are less than 2 minutes out. Student is inside. Gate is locked. Wade stopped 10 feet from Noah and lowered himself slightly, not kneeling this time, just making his voice warm enough to reach a scared boy without embarrassing him. Hey Noah, my name is Wade. I am Ava's dad. Noah looked at him, then at Rachel, then toward the side door. Grandpa Dan has my truck. Rachel pressed both hands together near her chest, fighting every instinct to rush him. Wade kept his eyes on Noah. That sounds like it matters to you. Noah nodded, tears gathering but not falling. He said Mom lost it. Rachel whispered, I did not lose it. I put it away because he kept coming by. Wade understood then. Daniel was not using force. He was using a child's affection, a child's confusion, a child's wish that adults could stop hurting each other and go back to being simple. That was what made it dangerous in a way people often missed. Wade looked toward Mrs. Brooks. Can Noah step back into the classroom with you? Noah shook his head quickly. But he will leave. Wade turned back to him. Maybe he will. But a toy can wait. Your safety cannot. The words hung in the hallway, plain and heavy. Noah looked at Rachel again. This time she found her voice, soft but clear. Baby, I am right here. You are not in trouble. You do not have to go to anyone just because they brought something you love. The intercom buzzed again. Daniel's tone sharpened beneath the sweetness. Noah, do not listen to them. Grandpa just wants to talk. Officer Wells moved closer to the locked side door, positioning herself where the camera could see her clearly. Wade stepped beside her, but not in front of her. That mattered. She was the officer. This was her lane. His job was to protect space, not take control of it. Through the narrow window beside the door, Daniel spotted Wade. The man's expression changed, irritation flashing across his ordinary face. Who is that? Daniel called through the glass. Why is some motorcycle guy standing near my grandson? Wade did not answer. Officer Wells did. Sir, step away from the school gate. You are not authorized to be here. Daniel lifted the red toy fire truck into view. I am his grandfather. You are not authorized to be here, she repeated. The first patrol car turned into the school driveway, lights flashing silently under the noon sun. Daniel saw it. For a moment, his confidence wavered. Behind Wade, Noah finally stepped backward into Mrs. Brooks's classroom, and the teacher closed the door gently, not with a slam, but with the quiet sound of a boundary being honored. Rachel covered her face and wept in relief. Wade remained still until Officer Wells nodded that the hallway was secure. Only then did he breathe. Through the office window far behind him, he could see Ava standing beside Mrs. Lane, small and brave and watching everything. Wade touched 2 fingers to his heart, then pointed to her, the signal they had used since she was little. I see you. Ava answered the same way, and for the first time that day, her shoulders relaxed. The patrol car came to a stop near the west entrance, and the sound of its doors opening carried down the hallway like the first real breath after holding air too long. Wade stayed where he was, hands visible, shoulders relaxed, letting Officer Wells move ahead. That choice did not feel natural to him. His whole life had taught him to step forward when others stepped back, to become the largest thing between trouble and the people he loved. But today, strength meant staying in his place. Through the narrow window, Daniel Price backed 2 steps from the gate, still holding the red fire truck as if a child's toy could explain away 3 days of watching, waiting, and calling through school property. 2 local officers approached from the sidewalk side, while Officer Wells opened the exterior door only after confirming the children were behind secured classroom doors. Sir, one officer said, calm and clear, we need you to set the toy on the ground and speak with us. Daniel's face changed again. The softness disappeared first, then the wounded grandfather expression, then the polite confusion. What remained was not dramatic, not monstrous, not the kind of evil people expected to recognize from far away. It was something smaller and more familiar, a man angry that the word no had finally held. I have a right to see my grandson, Daniel said. Rachel stepped forward just enough for him to see her through the glass, but Wade stayed beside her, not touching her, not crowding her, simply present in case her knees forgot how to hold. Rachel's voice shook, yet every word landed. No, Dad. You do not. Not here. Not like this. Noah is safe, and you are not taking him. Daniel looked past her at Wade. You let this biker scare you into this. The accusation hit the hallway like a match that failed to catch. Months earlier, years earlier, maybe Wade would have answered with pride, with threat, with the old armor of reputation. Instead, he looked at the camera above the door, then at Officer Wells, and said nothing. Silence, he had learned, could be cleaner than a comeback. Rachel did not look away from her father. No, my son's classmates saw what adults missed. That is why we know. For the first time, Daniel glanced toward the office windows, where Ava stood beside Mrs. Lane. The look was brief, but Wade saw it. Surprise. Frustration. The kind of look people wore when they realized a child had not been as invisible as they assumed. One of the officers asked Daniel to turn around and keep his hands where they could see them. There was no shouting, no chase, no seen children would have to carry home in their sleep. Just firm voices, clear instructions, and the quiet power of rules finally being followed. Daniel set the toy truck on the ground. The red plastic looked painfully bright against the concrete. Its little silver ladder raised halfway, as if waiting for a rescue that had already happened. Inside the classroom, Noah sat at a reading table with Mrs. Brooks nearby, his eyes fixed on the closed door. He could not see the officers from where he was, but he could hear grown-up voices and knew enough to be afraid. Ava appeared at the classroom doorway a few minutes later with Mrs. Lane's permission, holding 2 unopened cartons of chocolate milk from the office refrigerator. She did not rush in like a hero. She walked carefully, as if approaching a bird that might fly away. "I brought one for you," she said. Noah looked at the milk, then at her. "Did I do something wrong?" Ava shook her head with the certainty only a child could offer another child. "No. My dad says when grown-ups make confusing choices, kids still deserve to be safe." Wade heard those words from the hallway and had to look down at the floor for a moment. There were many things he had not done right in his life. He had raised his voice when he should have listened. He had let pride dress itself up as protection. He had believed, once, that being feared meant being respected. But somehow, through bedtime talks, morning safety games, and every hard apology he had ever forced himself to make, Ava had learned the lesson better than he had taught it. Officer Wells returned after Daniel was placed in the patrol car. She spoke with Rachel first, confirming the court order, the previous reports, and the steps that would come next. Principal Dawson stood nearby with a legal pad, writing down everything that needed to change before the final bell. Playground monitoring, visitor protocols, side gate audio review, staff training, emergency contact alerts. Mrs. Brooks came into the hallway holding Noah's hand. Her eyes found Ava. "You noticed the pattern," she said softly. "That matters." Ava glanced at Wade, then back at her teacher. "I was scared you would think I was being silly." Mrs. Brooks knelt, not caring that the hallway floor was hard beneath her knees. "I should never make a student feel silly for saying they feel unsafe. I am sorry." Noah reached for Rachel, and she folded him into her arms with the fierce gentleness of a mother trying not to frighten the child she was desperate to hold. Wade turned away to give them privacy. Outside, the patrol car pulled from the curb. The playground beyond the windows was empty now, swings moving lightly in the breeze, the bench near the fence bare under the afternoon sun. It looked ordinary again, but Wade knew ordinary was not the same as safe. Safe was built by people who paid attention. Safe was protected by children who were believed, teachers who corrected themselves, officers who followed procedure, and parents who did not let fear decide for them. Ava came to his side and slipped her hand into his. "Did I help?" she asked. Wade looked down at his daughter, at the brave little girl who had seen what everyone else had walked past, and his rough voice softened until it barely sounded like the man most people expected. "Yes, baby," he said. "You helped before anyone got hurt. That is the best kind of brave there is." By the time the final bell rang, Maple Ridge Elementary no longer felt like a place returning to normal. It felt like a place waking up. Teachers stood at classroom doors with sharper eyes than they had that morning. The front office checked every dismissal card twice. Principal Dawson walked the west hallway himself, not because anyone had ordered him to, but because responsibility had stopped being an idea on a handbook page and become the face of a child with a red lunchbox. Wade waited near the office with Ava beside him, watching buses line up along the curb while parents moved through the pickup lane in slow, careful waves. Rachel Bennett sat in a chair across from them with Noah tucked against her side. The boy held the chocolate milk Ava had brought him, turning it between his hands without opening it. His eyes kept drifting to the window, then back to his mother, as if making sure she was still there. Rachel noticed and pulled him closer. "You are coming home. With me?" she said softly. "Just like always." Noah nodded, but his lower lip trembled. Was Grandpa Dan mad at me? Rachel closed her eyes for a moment, and Wade saw the pain of a parent trying to give a child the truth without handing him a burden too heavy to carry. "No, honey. Adults are responsible for their own choices. You did not make anyone do anything." Ava listened closely, her small hand folded inside Wade's. He squeezed once, a quiet reminder that those words mattered for her too. Children had a way of collecting blame that did not belong to them, storing it in little corners of the heart where adults sometimes forgot to look. Officer Wells came back into the office with a folder under her arm. Her expression was professional, but not cold. "Mrs. Bennett, the officers confirmed the active order. Daniel Price is being processed, and the school will receive a written notice for the file. We will also document today's camera footage and your statement." Rachel nodded. "Thank you." Her voice nearly broke. "I kept telling myself the school was safe because it was a school." Officer Wells softened. "Schools can be safe, but safety is not a place. It is a practice." Wade looked toward the playground beyond the glass. The swings moved in the breeze, empty and innocent, as if nothing unusual had happened there at all. That was the strange part about danger avoided. There was no broken glass, no dramatic scar left behind, no obvious sign that a terrible moment had been turned aside by one child paying attention. Just a bench, a gate, a camera, and a group of adults who had finally listened in time. Principal Dawson entered with Mrs. Brooks at his side. He looked older than he had an hour earlier. Not defeated, but humbled. "I have spoken with the district office," he said. "Starting tomorrow, staff will rotate playground observation from 2 points instead of 1. The West Gate buzzer will be disabled during school hours unless monitored directly. We are also updating emergency contact alerts so restricted names appear on the first screen, not buried in the file." Mrs. Brooks glanced at Ava. "And I am changing something in my classroom too. When a student reports a concern, we are going to write it down, check it, and follow up. No one should have to say the same scary thing 3 times before it matters." Ava looked at the floor, embarrassed by the attention. Wade knew that look. She did not want to be famous. She wanted to feel safe. He rested a hand gently on her shoulder. "You hear that, kiddo? What you noticed is going to help other kids too." Noah finally looked at her. "You saw him before I did." Ava nodded. "I saw him looking. I did not know why." Noah swallowed. "I thought maybe I was supposed to go because he knew my name." Wade crouched so both children could see his face. "That is something every kid should know. Knowing your name does not make someone safe. Having a toy you recognize does not make someone safe. Even being family does not mean a grown-up gets to break the rules your safe parent made." Rachel's eyes filled again, but this time she did not look away. Mrs. Brooks repeated it quietly, as if memorizing the sentence for the children who were not in the office. "Knowing your name does not make someone safe." Officer Wells nodded. "That lesson saves lives without frightening children. We teach them to check first, not to live scared." Wade stood, and for a moment his reflection appeared in the office window beside the school posters about kindness, attendance, and reading week. A rough-looking biker in a place built for crayons and lunch trays. Earlier that morning, some people had looked at him like he did not belong there. Now Mrs. Lane handed him Ava's backpack with a grateful smile. "You stayed very calm, Mr. Mercer," she said. Wade gave a small, tired shrug. "My daughter taught me that people listen better when you do." Ava looked up at him, surprised and proud all at once. Outside, parents were still arriving, unaware how close the day had come to becoming a story with a different ending. Rachel stood with Noah and turned to Ava one last time. "Thank you," she said. "Not for being fearless. For speaking even though you were afraid." Ava thought about that, then answered in the serious voice she used when something mattered. "My dad says brave is what you do while your stomach feels scared." Wade smiled, but his throat tightened. The world had not become gentler in one afternoon. The fences were still fences. The sidewalks still belonged to strangers. Families were still complicated, and not every warning would be easy to explain. But as he walked Ava toward the parking lot, past the flag, past the buses, past the West Gate where an officer now stood taking notes, Wade understood that protection was not only standing in front of someone. Sometimes it was teaching them that their voice deserved to be heard, and making sure the world answered when they used it. A week later, Maple Ridge Elementary looked the same from the street, but it did not feel the same to the people who had been there that day. The flag still snapped above the front entrance. The buses still sighed at the curb. Children still spilled across the sidewalks with backpacks bouncing and lunchboxes swinging against their knees. But near the west gate, there was a new camera angle, a locked sign-in box, and a staff member in a yellow safety vest who watched the playground instead of watching the clock. Change did not arrive with a parade. It arrived in small corrections, repeated every day until they became protection. Wade Mercer noticed all of it as he walked Ava to the front doors, his motorcycle parked 2 spaces from the visitor sign, quiet in the morning sun. Ava held his hand longer than usual, not because she was afraid to let go, but because something between them had deepened. She had learned that her voice could matter. He had learned that his daughter had been listening all along, not just to his warnings, but to the way he tried to become a better man. "Do you think Noah is okay?" she asked. Wade looked toward the playground, where Noah Bennett stood near the swings with 2 classmates, laughing at something small and ordinary. Rachel was near the drop-off lane, speaking with Mrs. Brooks. Both women calmer now, both changed by the kind of fear that becomes wisdom when people do not turn away from it. "I think he is getting there," Wade said. "Sometimes okay comes back one normal morning at a time." Ava nodded as if she understood more than most adults expected children to understand. Inside the school, the first safety meeting was held in the cafeteria after announcements. It was not meant to scare anyone. Officer Wells stood beside Principal Dawson and spoke in a voice warm enough for children and serious enough for adults. She told them that safe grown-ups do not ask children to keep secrets from parents, that a person knowing your name does not mean you must go with them, and that if one adult does not understand your worry, you should tell another safe adult. Mrs. Brooks added one sentence that made the room go very quiet. "No student is being dramatic when they say they feel unsafe. Our job is to listen, check, and help." Ava sat with her class, cheeks pink, eyes down, while Noah gave her a shy smile from the next table. Nobody called her a hero. Nobody made her stand on a stage. That was what Wade liked best. Children did not need the weight of saving the day placed on their shoulders. They needed to know that telling the truth was enough. Later, when the morning meeting ended, Principal Dawson found Wade near the office. "I owe you an apology too," he said. "When you walked in, I thought I was about to manage an angry parent." Wade gave a tired half-smile. "Most people think that before they know me. Maybe we should know people better before deciding who they are." Wade looked through the glass at Ava hanging her backpack on a hook. "That goes both ways," he said. "I spent years thinking respect meant people stepping aside when I came through. Took me a while to learn real respect feels a lot quieter." That afternoon, when Wade picked Ava up, she came running with a folded paper in one hand. It was a drawing from Noah. In crayon, he had drawn the school, the fence, a tiny red fire truck, and 3 people standing near the door: his mom, Ava, and a large man with a gray beard. Underneath, in careful second-grade letters, he had written, "Thank you for helping me stay safe." Wade stared at the picture longer than he meant to. His hands, rough from years of engines and hard lessons, held the paper as gently as if it were glass. Ava leaned against his side. "Are you going to put it on the fridge?" "No," Wade said, his voice thick. "I am going to frame it." On the ride home, they passed the diner, the hardware store, and the church sign with its new message about kindness being courage in work clothes. The town looked ordinary again, but Wade knew ordinary was something people had to protect together. At a red light, Ava's arms tightened around his waist. "Dad." "Yeah, baby." "Was I brave because I called you?" Wade looked at the crosswalk ahead, at the families waiting on the corner, at the world full of people who all needed someone to notice when something was wrong. "You were brave because you trusted what you saw, and you cared enough to speak." The light turned green. The Harley rolled forward, not like thunder this time, but like a promise moving carefully through town. And long after that day became just another story people told at Maple Ridge, Wade remembered the lesson his little girl had given every adult around her. Children should not have to be loud to be believed, and strength is not proven by how much fear a man can create, but by how much safety he leaves behind.